Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about Valley Forge. So after the Saratoga campaign, Washington knew he would have French help in the spring, but he had to make it through the winter. So we see George Washington here. And right now his problem is this. He won the Saratoga campaign, so the French king agreed to help him. But because France is all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, the French soldiers and money can't get there until the spring. So he still has to make it through the winter of 1777 to 1778. And it was a cold winter. On top of that, Philadelphia, the capital of the new United States, where the Continental Congress met, had been taken over by the British during the Saratoga campaign. Remember that Red Army that we said got distracted and it didn't go up to Albany, but instead it went down to Philadelphia? Well, they were still distracted there, but they were occupying the city. They had taken over the whole city. So Congress had had to run and hide in Pennsylvania and meet out in the middle of Pennsylvania rather than in Philadelphia where they normally met. And Congress was made up of all the most important people in the new United States, all the most powerful men. So George Washington had to put his army camp between where Congress was hiding in Pennsylvania and the British army that had taken over Philadelphia. So he put it in Valley Forge, right between where Congress was hiding and the city of Philadelphia. And at first, the camp was horrible. There was not enough to eat, no discipline, and the weather was freezing. So there wasn't enough food where they were. No one would sell the Americans food because they didn't have enough money. And they didn't want American money. They wanted the British money because they didn't know if George Washington and his army would win. And if George Washington lost, then his money would be worthless. So they refused to take George Washington's money and asked him to pay in British money, which he didn't have. So they couldn't get enough food, and there wasn't really enough firewood. So even their fires were small because they didn't have enough wood to burn to keep really warm. And because of this, there was no discipline. So no one wanted to follow orders or listen to commands. So when people would go on guard duty, rather than standing guard at the edge of camp, they would look around till no one was watching, and they would just run off into the night and go home rather than stay in the army. And the reason no one knew what to do is George Washington's army were all volunteers. Volunteers are when you do something because you think it's the right thing to do, or you think it'll be fun, but you do it for free instead of money. Once again, George Washington's army were volunteers. A volunteer is when you do something but you don't get paid. You do it because you think it's the right thing to do or you think it's fun. And since they were volunteers, they did not know how to be soldiers. George Washington knew this, so he found a professional soldier. If a volunteer is someone who does something for free because they think it's fun or the right thing to do, a professional is someone who does something because it's their job. They are paid to do it because they are good at it. And George Washington found a professional German soldier named Baron von Studen who volunteered to help organize the camp, train the Patriot Army as well. And by the way, the Patriot Army, we're going to start calling it the Continental Army. So instead of the Patriot Army, it's going to be the Continental Army. Now you see Baron von Studen here, and he's training George Washington's army. So right now they're volunteers, so they're not professionals. They're not trained to be soldiers. They're just doing it because they think it's the right thing. And Baron von Studen, the German professional soldier, where it's his job, it's been his whole life, is training Washington's men how to kneel in one row and stand in a row in the back so the front row can shoot while the back row reloads. And that way, there's never a time where George Washington's army wouldn't be shooting at the enemy. Along with training the army how to fight, Von Steuben also trained them on how to keep their camp clean. Because before he came, everyone just kind of did whatever they wanted anywhere. They used the bathroom wherever they wanted, they cooked their food wherever they wanted, they slept wherever they wanted. Baron von Steuben looked at this when he walked in the camp and he almost threw up. He started yelling at George Washington in German because he didn't know how to speak English except to curse. And finally, they found an interpreter. And the first thing the interpreter said is that von Steuben was so mad and disgusted because an army camp needed to have its bathroom in one side, its cook in the other side, and its beds on the other side of the thing. So Baron von Steuben trained Washington's army to do that, and after he did that, they knew how to set up their camp so that their bathrooms, their beds, and their kitchen would not be anywhere near each other. Between these two things, training them how to fight and training them how to set up their camp, Baron von Steuben turned George Washington's volunteer army into a professional army. And when he was done, Washington's army finally started acting like a professional army. Man, I cannot keep that thing from popping up in the middle of all this, can I? All right, guys, take care of yourself. I'll see you tomorrow.